Welcome to Become an Idol. I'm Dr. Robin Sargent, owner of Idol Courses. This is the place where newbies come to learn and veterans share their knowledge. I have here with me today Dr. Jiani Wu, and funny enough, I actually met Dr. Jiani because she just said on LinkedIn, she said, "Hey, I'd love to connect with you and stay inspired." And I was like, "Sure." And then she asked me a question. She said, "What are you focusing on in terms of learning design these days?" And I just replied, "Oh, it just happened to be Universal Design for Learning." And then we just started sparking a conversation over LinkedIn Messenger. And Dr. Jiani said, like, well, I am actually interested in micro personalized learning. And I thought, what a great podcast episode is to bring Dr. Jiani here and to share with us about kind of her research and findings about what is micro personalized learning. So, Dr. Jiani, would you please do a more formal, full introduction of yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Robin. I'm so glad to get on your podcast this time. So a little introduction about myself. I am currently working as a instructional designer at Rhode Island College. My major responsibility is to help faculties transit their courses online during this special time. And then tracing back, I was born in China and I spent my first 20-some years back in China. And my dad worked in the media production industry, and since I was little, I was following him around, carrying the camera and recording and producing shows and chatting with people. So I think that's kind of embedded in my genes. And then I did my master's and my doctorate degrees in Boston University. And during this process, my love in media and learning just further deepened through the process. So when I came out of school, I worked as instructional designer. So I think my whole life and career trajectory is kind of very like curiosity based. And I feel very lucky to be where I am at this point.
I know what you're saying, Dr. Jenny. It's like it does feel lucky, doesn't it? It's like, how did we just like be in a place where we can be creative and also use kind of like those analytical parts of our brain, and then we're in learning. And I know exactly how you feel. Like you feel lucky to be an idol, really.
Yeah.
So I usually ask, so how did you become an idol? You kind of mentioned it already, but can we get a little bit in the detail? So when did you get your first instructional design job? Was it during your master's, before that? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so my first instructional design job is actually in my doctorate course programs in Boston University. At that time, we were taking a course about multimedia learning design, and we need to complete this like final project. And I'm like, okay, I'm tired of just talking and thinking and just writing articles or essays, and I need to get my hands dirty and start doing something. So again, I went on LinkedIn and I searched around and I found that there is a startup. They are called FP Girls. They they do customized clothing for young girls age 9 to 10. And they were launching an online design school. It's kind of like the early stage of like customer education part of businesses that they do. So me and my classmates, 3 of my classmates, we teamed up and we took on this project and we just designed our first learning programs for real clients. So that's kind of the first taste of instructional design. I think that was back in 2013. Yeah, and then later on I started working with Boston University. They have a metropolitan school they've been doing online learning for quite a few years, maybe like 10 years by that time. So I joined their team and I started working with them and helping faculty design their online courses for about like 2 to 3 years. And on the side, I'm still doing my doctorate classes and stuff. But at that time, I had more freedom to kind of do the work and also finish my requirements for the program. And then later on, I graduated back in 2018. Then I started working for Boston Children's Hospital to help create their virtual training programs for doctors, because doctor needs to renew their licenses every year, so they need continued education. So we helped them build that online learning program. And also at that time, we initiated a program called the just-in-time learning, because as doctors, they, even though they've learned a lot, but sometimes in an urgent situation, they need to quickly pull together a procedural for a particular treatment. And what we did is we created this just-in-time learning to just refresh their memories, and we put like a QR code next to like a particular treatment machine or like an emergency room. So whenever they need that quick memory refresh, they just scan the QR code and learn a quick procedural or a quick like treatment pathway. So that was interesting. And then after that, I started working as instructional designer at Rhode Island College. So coming a
So
full
you
circle.
switched from the medical kind of corporate space to back to higher ed.
Yeah.
Well, what made you make the switch? I'm just curious.
Because I think at that time I was thinking about the concept of universal design at that time. And I was chatting with my manager and he said that, oh, we don't have time for that type of stuff. So I'm like, okay, it's understandable, because all you do is you use Articulate and you create courses, and they've already mapped the course and you create the course. So I feel like I'm more in the production part rather than like design and explore and research and at that time I was really curious about universal design because I feel like that's kind of the future of education. So I'm like, okay, maybe I need to go to a place where I get to do work based on curiosity, based on research, have a little bit more freedom to poke things around and see what's out there and do experiments. So I think at that moment I kind of realized that, maybe it's time for me to go back and explore further. But I'm not sure if I'm going to continue staying in the higher ed. I think there's no way to predict that, but I decide based on the moment.
I like it. I like that you just decide where your interests are. I mean, there are so many people that are probably listening right now that are thinking like, wait, she had an e-learning developer job and then she went to higher ed. But I think really the point is that, you got interested in a certain specific part of instructional design and you weren't able to do that there. And so you just went where you could.
Yeah. Maybe my curiosity will lead me somewhere else. Who knows? You never know.
Of course it will. Well, I'll just say that it will. There's no doubt about it. I won't even go into how many jobs I've changed. So we're actually here to talk about micro personalization, which is kind of the thing that you're tinkering around with right now in your current role. And so could you just, most of our audience are Idle Nation, if you will. Many of them are new to instructional design. And so would you just give kind of a definition or explanation about what is micro personalization in learning?
I'm not sure if I can give like very short and sweet definition to that. I may make it very messy. Okay. I think micro personalized learning is, I don't know if you have learned, if anybody have learned language through any language apps. So in this language apps, what you do is they give you different levels of mastery, and then you just go through the first level to the second level to the third level. And when you start your first level, you have a daily chunk of lessons. For example, today we're going to learn about grammar. Next time we're going to learn about vocabulary. And sometimes those pieces are small and interesting enough that even if you're in a bathtub, even if you're in a bathtub or in the bathroom, you can just sit there and then just go through one lesson, and boom, you just have like, oh, checked, next one. So these kind of micro learning thing is something that you can fit into your busy schedule, and you have a learner agency, like you have your choice. You choose which one to learn, and you choose how long you learn them. So an ideal micro learning process will look like a language app. So it'll have different levels of mastery, and for each levels you have different mini micro learning objectives, and surrounding that learning objective you have those mini micro content, whether it's a 2-minute video or 2-minute article to read, or a 2-minute paper to write. All these comes into a kind of a basic unit of your learning, of your micro learning path. And then because all that learning path is basically checking and testing your understanding. So you probably know Bloom's taxonomy. So that's basically focused on the first 3 tier of Bloom's. So in order to tap into like the creativity, the critical thinking, evaluation, that kind of skills, then you can embed a real project. And in those real projects, you can do, maybe it's not still a full Bloom project. It's kind of part of a final project. So for this project, you get to practice what you just learned. Maybe we've just learned how to use storyline to build different layers, and build different conditions. Then you use just the layers and the condition knowledge and skills to build 1 or 2 pages of a storyline for this project. Then you go to another micro learning pod or unit, and then you do your mini learning or mini watching video, mini reading the article. Then you go through maybe 2 or 3 of them. Then you come into another kind of milestone project, and then you do that using maybe 1 or 2 newly learned skills. Then after this have repeated several times, at the end you combine all the skills and all the milestone skills into a final skills, and you create something really big, like a big project. Maybe that project is kind of client based, or like a multiple page articulate production. So that's kind of my explanation of micro learning.
I love it. And so, like you've already said, I mean, you could use this in storyline training. This is something that you could use. They already use in language apps, and there's so many different applications. And I really like what you said about how it gives people agency. And when people feel like they have some kind of choice, or they're part of their decision making in their own learning, then they value it more. Right?
Definitely. Yeah, because most of times when we find ourselves overwhelmed about something, it's usually we are presented with a lot of potential choices, and we're kind of like frozen because we don't know which one to choose. Should I choose this one first? Should I choose this one first? And will all these lead to my final destination? Am I wasting my time? Do I have enough time to do all that? Do I have to learn all that? Or can I just pick one critical one? So all that kind of taking the space in our brain and put us in a very overwhelmed state, rather than, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is the results I'm looking for. Let me just do that. So I think that approach will potentially alleviate that kind of overwhelming pressure.
Have you had the opportunity to put any micro personalization into your current projects?
Yes, actually, we are piloting with a a professor in School of Education. We are kind of chunking the materials down into micro learning pieces, and we're using the badge system in Blackboard to kind of create this sense of achievement, kind of like little game mechanisms in there as well. So yeah, we're currently piloting and designing the project. So we'll let you know how that goes.
So do they get a badge for complete, like what are they getting badges for? Like, is it for completing a certain number of chunks that leads to a milestone for the final project, or?
Yeah, those badges are so whenever you complete a micro learning unit, maybe then you get like a few points, then you get through 5 of them, then you get a badge. So it's kind of like yeah, there's no ideal numbers of like how many of the micro learning unit you need to get until you get like a badge. It's totally depending on your own preference and things.
Yeah, it's depending on points, and you get points from completing your lessons, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. That's really neat. So what about, now you come from kind of, the healthcare corporate space, and if you were to go back and add micro personalization there, it seems like you kind of did a little bit of that with the QR codes and I mean, not full micro personalization. I mean, that's more like just in time, like you said, but how would you apply that in kind of a corporate education space?
What I think we're gonna start with the learning objective maps. So we're gonna, because a lot of times even in corporate we have this overarching learning objectives, even if it's action based, in order to complete that particular skill or action you need to learn different other skills before that, and that's where higher ed is kind of doing a better work in terms of defining learning objectives and chunk them down and layer them up and sequentialize them, because they're doing like the scaffolding thing. So if I were in the corporate space, well, the first thing I'm going to do is just to chunk down and layer and scaffold those learning objectives. And once that learning objective and learning objective map is done, then the rest is easy. Just create materials surrounding that micro learning objective. And once the whole map is done, the personalized micro learning is done.
Yeah. And I see so many, well, I don't know how many, but I've seen quite a few corporate entities kind of move to competency based models so that they can create more of a learning culture. And I think that kind of syncs up with what you're saying, where if you have everything mapped out, even if you just have like random things coming up, then you have the ability to create a scaffold if you know what all those competencies are for a role and all the roles in your company. And if you keep it micro, you could probably even take pieces for one role and also just duplicate that micro piece for another role if it's the same type of competency.
Exactly. And also that map is it's a growing, it's a living map. Like your inventory for your learning and for your academy, you're always adding more materials to it. That kind of thing applies to that learning map as well. The learning map is always evolving. There's always going to be new micro learning pieces, materials, or objectives being incorporated. So the map is always growing.
What I like about this approach, Dr. Jiani, is that it's something that you can apply large scale, like we've just mentioned, like competency based mapping, across a company and all the different roles, or you can apply it to one single course.
Exactly.
So, anybody who's thinking like, oh man, I have to map out all the competencies of every role in the company, like, no, I mean, that's just another example. And instead, like, you could structure it for one module, one course, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's not yes, like that type of like living map project, that it's like it's a huge project. To zoom it in, yes, you can definitely apply that just that type of thinking into whatever you're doing. So for example, if you are creating some sort of like storyline stories, and you're like, okay, this is 3 of my top learning objectives for this production. For okay, let's take the first one. Okay, can I break the first one down to a little bit, and can I create more scenarios for this first learning objective? Maybe instead of one production, maybe I can do like a sequel, like a production 1, production 2, production 3. So so all that. So this is kind of more of like thinking, a way of thinking, kind of.
Yeah, and even giving people choices too. I mean, that's something that you could pretty easily do in storyline and just set it up with scenes.
Exactly. Yeah. And Storyline has the data incorporated. I was trying to play with PowerPoint. PowerPoint can somehow mimic, articulate to provide some sort of learner agency or choices, but they won't be able to report all the data, where Articulate is able to be very intelligent in that sense that they can create data and then to inform where the learner is, and be more like data driven.
So what are some of your, I mean, you must have been inspired somewhere, Dr. Gianni. So what are some of your favorite resources for micro personalization and learning more?
Yeah, this is actually inspired by my boss. She is a health psychology professor, and I think she mentioned something about a concept of mere exposure, that says that whenever you're exposed to something that you can understand quickly and easily, it's like you're getting planted a seed in your mind, and then the seed will grow and grow and grow. And then so she's talking about when you have this mere exposure, it's kind of like it's a micro seed, it's a micro learning experience for you, and then it comes out to be something bigger, and maybe it takes time, maybe it's quick, maybe next day you'll be able to use that seed, but yeah, it's totally inspired by her. That's that I am kind of on this path. And I'm also currently exploring the concept of adaptive learning. I think adaptive learning is the next stage of personalized micro learning. So I'm doing more research on that. I'm
And
happy
you,
to come back and share more about that.
yeah, and what's kind of, I mean, since you brought up adaptive learning, how does it look different from micro personalization?
It's quite similar. When you're talking about micro personalization, we don't talk about data a lot, learner data a lot. But when we're talking about adaptive learning, it's a lot of data from like the learner data driven. So for example, if we are creating this micro learning unit, and people will finish like a quiz or a project at the end, depends on whether they finish it or not, they may need to be redirected to another micro learning module to train their skills if they kind of didn't pass that threshold. So that creates a challenge to create multiple paralleled micro learning units that train similar skills from different perspectives. So that just adds another layer of micro learning.
I got you. Yeah, no, I think that's good, and I think it's good to just kind of explain how those things are similar.
Mm-hmm.
One you can like start working on today, which is micro personalization, and then adaptive learning is something where you're going to need a lot more time to build.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
More layers.
more
More
layers.
layers and more data, because you need to see like if the learner has like an 80% out of 100 for one of the assignment, do you move them on, or do you keep them and revisiting some of the other similar micro learning units? So there's a little art of a balance there.
And sometimes we put this in our courses in small ways, maybe not like the full data way, but we have quizzes or some kind of assessment set up where based on the ones that they get incorrect, they can go and maybe relearn those, and we like take them back to another mini lesson.
Exactly. Yes.
That'd be like the baby version.
Yes, yes, the small and baby version. Yes, and going back to your questions about like where can people learn about micro learning and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to be the voice in that realm. And so I every day I'm writing little articles and little postings on my LinkedIn. So I would share that with people. So that's kind of if they're interested, they can come and add me, and that's where I share my learnings there.
Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna drop Dr. Jiani Wu's LinkedIn link in our show notes. And then you'll be able to connect with her there. And then you already have, so you've written quite a few articles already that people can go and check out and learn more.
Yeah, and my article is not like large articles. These articles are like 1 minute kind of read, and even videos is like 1 or 2 minutes. So I'm kind of practicing and experimenting that concept into what I do.
I love it. You're practicing what you preach.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is such great insight, even for those that are just getting started in our field. If they can just think about creating a course as creating like this micro personalization, and just chunking down each of their learning objectives, I think it would just make their course just so much better right from the jump start. That's just such a great thing to introduce new and experienced people to. So what is your best advice for those just starting in their instructional design career?
I think be inspired, like follow your curiosity, because when you're in that learning design space, you are helping people to become a better person, and you're helping them to learn more. And whenever you learn it, it may not look like something magical, but actually when we learn something, our brain neurons changes, like the connections among neurons, new neurons come out and new connections are formed. So it's actually a very biological process when you help people learn. So whatever courses that you design, you may change the neural connections for a few people, and that can transform their lives. They may think differently, they may act differently, and that difference may trigger a new series of events for them. So when we design learning, it's not just put letters or graphics or animations on paper or on any apps or on any platforms. It's actually making those new neurological connections inside people's brains, and magic will happen.
Oh my gosh, I love that perspective. I'm totally gonna steal that. I mean, just you wait, Dr. Gianni. I'll be like in my academy talking about how you guys are changing people's neurons and neurological pathways. That is a brilliant way to think about it, because it is. We all sometimes we get up in, I mean, I guess this is kind of puns all over the place, but we get up in our head and we think like, it is just what you said. We think it's, I got to get the graphics just right. I got to write the script just right. But when you think about what your real outcome and goal is that you are biologically changing people's minds that can change their entire career and path and way of being. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'm just having goosebumps just hearing you saying that again.
You too. Oh my gosh, this has been such a pleasure. And when your book is done, you're going to come back and talk to us again about Design to Engage. That's your title. I just went ahead and threw it out there. So it's like officially copyrighted by Dr. Jiani Wu.
Thank you, Dr. Robin. Yeah.
So I just really enjoyed talking to you and learning about micro personalization. And thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Dr. Robin, for this invitation. And I really enjoyed our chat. And you are a fascinating person. And I'm very happy to connect with you, and hope our chat will plant a little seed for your academy students and future explorers and learning designers.
Oh yeah. And we'll be chatting on the side later too.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find the show notes for this episode at idlecourses.com. If you like this podcast and you want to become an instructional designer and online learning developer, join me in the Idle Courses Academy, where you'll learn to build all the assets you need to land your first instructional design job, early access to this podcast, tutorials for how to use the e-learning authoring tools, templates for everything course building, and paid instructional design experience opportunities. Go to idlecourses.com/academy and enroll or get on the waitlist. Now get out there and build transcendent courses.